next breakout quarterback? That question has been asked every offseason by everybody in the NFL for decades. We all want to know who the next superstar is before they become, well, a superstar. When we look historically at when those breakouts happen, we can narrow the field of who will be next. History shows that a quarterback's second season is when all-time greats begin to blow up. John Elway, Peyton Manning, and Dan Marino all began to establish themselves as legendary players in year 2. And more recently, the trend has become impossible to ignore. In 2017, Carson Wentz almost won MVP. Then a year later, Mahomes did win it. And in 19, so did Lamar. So the 2020 season inevitably begs the question, who will break out and join the list? Kyler Murray, 2019's Offensive Rookie of the Year, looks like he is well on his way. Through the first 2 games of this season, he's become the first quarterback in the Super Bowl era to pass for 500 plus yards and run for 150. While most second-year quarterbacks break out because of their arms, he has broken out because of his legs. His 10.5 rush attempts per game has nearly doubled this season. His 7.5 yards per rush leads the NFL, and he already has 3 touchdowns on the ground, when last year he finished with 4 on 70 more attempts. His scrambling outside the pocket and ability to create second plays have caused a whole new set of nightmares across the league. And it's not like he's tearing up crappy defenses. The 49ers, off a Super Bowl appearance, were at full strength in week 1, and Washington leads the league in sacks, but Kyler shredded both of them up and down the field. Not only is he dominating out of structure, but the Cardinals are calling more designed QB runs so he can dominate within structure. Where's the best place to look for designed QB runs? How about the Ravens? Not every team can run the same plays that Greg Roman calls for Lamar because most teams don't have an explosive runner at quarterback. But most quarterbacks aren't Kyler Murray. This play on the left is from an old Greg Roman playbook that the 49ers ran with Kaepernick and now with Lamar. It's called 13 slap. It's similar to a split zone run, but with a zone read element. The offensive line will block like it's inside zone, but leave D lineman Montez Sweat unblocked to gain a numbers advantage. Kyler's job is to read him at the mesh point. If he sits for the QB keep, Kenyon Drake runs up the middle with one less lineman to avoid. But if Sweat crashes for Drake like he does here, Kyler keeps it and races around the edge. To combat zone reads, defenses will often scrape exchange, where instead of asking Sweat to play both the keep and the give, he's coached to crash for the give no matter what, while linebacker Kevin Pierre-Louis scrapes over the edge for the keep. But 13 slap is way ahead of that. By adding a tight end sifting across, this clears out either the alley defender or doubles the scraping linebacker. Because the Cardinals wisely use a nub formation with just the tight end and nobody else, there is no alley defender for the sifter to block. So he doubles back on Pierre-Louis and Kyler almost springs for another big run. He has quickly become one of the deadliest dual threat quarterbacks in the league. But while his rushing ability has become his calling card, his passing numbers remain somewhat pedestrian. In his rookie season, his 6.9 yards per attempt ranked 21st in the league, and this year it's actually decreased to 6.6. He's thrown for just 2 touchdowns, and while the Cardinals have the 4th ranked explosive run rate, they're 25th in explosive pass rate. Kyler is so young and such a dynamic runner that if he continues to grow and develop as a passer, he could become Mr. Unlimited. And he's solid so far, but there's still a ton of room for him to grow. To understand some of his strengths and weaknesses passing the ball, let's dive into Cliff Kingsbury's air raid system, how it affects defenses, and how Cliff creates easy completions. On the very first play of the season against the 49ers, the Cards come out in a typical spread formation. Last year and through the start of this year, to combat their air raid heavy attack, defenses have predominantly played 4 deep quarters coverage to keep a +1 advantage against the pass. This has helped create space underneath both for the quick game and for Kyler's scrambling ability. The Cardinals use motion to gauge how the defense will react. When the three underneath bump over to their left, this tells Kyler it's zone coverage because nobody follows in man. This gives him a coverage indicator, but also provides him with data points for how he can later manipulate certain defenders' assignments. He's watching the will linebacker and knows since the 49ers are honoring the trip set to their left, the will backer would be responsible for the running back who's aligned to the strength. This leaves DeAndre Hopkins essentially one-on-one and wide open on a quick speed out for 3 yards. So then the very next play, Kyler's extracted information on the 49ers game plan and how they will react to certain motion. They are again in quarters, leaving the underneath coverage a little thin, and the linebackers again bump over to their left to match the same motion. This is another trips look, but with two tight ends and Hopkins instead, with the key difference being the running back's alignment. He's not to the strength of the formation, now he's positioned weak. The Cardinals know the will backer has him in coverage, and Kyler knows that on the backside of their spacing concept, the will linebacker will very likely be pulled to the flat, opening Larry Fitzgerald on the spot route. The quarters defenders are positioned deep, and the Cardinals pick up 7. Cliff's air raid approach is predicated on attacking open space and manipulating specific defenders. That, paired with Kyler's plus arm talent and arm strength, gives the offense major potential. Cliff creates matchups underneath, while Kyler uses his powerful arm to threaten coverages deep, which maintains space for quick concepts and room for him to run. His greatest strength in the passing game is throwing one-on-one isolation routes, especially outside the numbers. And with the addition of Nuke Hopkins, that's where most of their production has come from. When defenses play quarters coverage, one-on-one routes outside the numbers essentially becomes man-on-man since there's one less underneath defender, meaning the flat player has to cover more space. Whether it's fade routes, fade stops, or back shoulder balls, Kyler and Hop have connected for a league-leading 22 catches. But where I'd like to see Kyler improve is moving through his progressions while reading the defense. At this point in his career, he is a great thrower and a great arm talent, but he's not yet a great quarterback. On a 3rd and 10, the Cardinals send 3 receivers to the right and a tight end to the left. The 49ers deploy a quarter shell once again, but Robert Saleh is trying to fool Kyler. He puts a cornerback on the tight end and safety Jimmy Ward on a receiver, which are both zone indicators, but their pressed alignment indicates man. The Cards are running 2 curl routes at the sticks with their blade concept from 1 and 2, which is their version of dagger. Christian Kirk runs the blade route, which is a deep cross that adjusts to coverage, and Nuke runs a deep dig. Kyler's progression starts with Kirk, and if he splits the safeties, or if they're in one high and this safety shaded towards the dig, Kyler will hit Kirk for the first down. But if Kirk is covered, he'll progress to Nuke on the dig. The 49ers look like they're playing too high, which they have all game, but they're actually playing cover 1 robber, where the free safety shifts deep middle and the strong safety comes down to rob crossers or anything else underneath. Kyler immediately reads this rotation after the snap. Since the robber safety comes down and away from the dig, Kyler should immediately progress to Nuke, who is about to run to the open space. Dick Sherman has tight coverage, but his leverage puts him out of position to cover the dig. Kyler is still somewhat of a wait-and-see thrower and has a tendency to leave big plays on the field. Part of the issue is the Cardinals' proclivity for sending 5 receivers out on routes, which forces their substandard offensive line to hold up in protection. Kyler sees the safety sliding back and the other coming down. When he hits the top of his drop, he should know the blade route is covered and to progress to the open space and coverage. But when his right tackle gets pancaked, he doesn't quite feel comfortable sitting in the pocket and anticipating the open nuke. It would have been a bang-bang tight window throw, but with poor protection and Kyler's gifts as a runner, it might take longer for him to develop as a downfield passer. But that's not to say he isn't learning fast or is incapable of reading defenses. He's proven he can study and learn from his mistakes. The more he plays and the game slows down for him, he'll become more comfortable going through his progressions while reading the coverage. Washington gives Kyler a similar look to the previous play, a too-high shell with what looks like man coverage. As the play starts, they shift into one robber just like the 49ers, except this time it's the free safety coming down and the strong safety rotating deep. The moment Kyler sees that rotation, he knows that nuke will be one-on-one since there's no inside help from the safety. Look how quickly he processes the information. He doesn't have to wait to see where nuke is, he's already starting his delivery by the time he tracks him. With the corner leveraged over the top and his back facing the quarterback, Kyler's releasing the ball just as nuke turns his head and the throw comes in perfect. It's almost impossible to defend for a corner. The timing is extremely difficult for the QB and wide receiver to master, especially without an offseason. This shows Kyler's skill and natural ability. It's still an isolation type route, but provides an example of how he's identifying defensive concepts through film study and past performances, then is using that against teams moving forward. There's some aspects of his game where he's unbelievably advanced for a second-year quarterback, but other aspects that make you worry. Kyler knows how defenses want to play him and this offense. They want to sit in quarters and keep numbers in the passing game. He understands the inherent weaknesses in that coverage and other coverages and how he can attack them. The amount of freedom Cliff has given him at the line speaks to his development at a young age. He changes both sides of the formation to what the Cardinals call their chrome return concept. He knows in quarters that the cornerbacks are responsible for the number ones and the safeties the twos. So if the safeties have to chase the twos to the corner, nobody will be in the deep middle of the field for a vertical from the backfield. But the worry for this Cardinals offense will always be the protection. 5 receivers out in the route sounds like a good idea, but that means one-on-one assignments for each of the offensive linemen. Kyler feels the edge pressure immediately, but still has plenty of room to step up into the pocket, reset, compose himself, then deliver an accurate ball. But because he rushes and is off balance, the ball sails. Later in the season at some point, I guarantee you will see Kenyon Drake or Chase Edmonds splitting the quarter safeties on this exact play, and Kyler will hit them for a massive gain. He obviously has what it takes to make this throw for a touchdown, and he's kicking himself that he missed it. But that's the worry. Between the Cardinals' poor protection and his incredible success as a runner, his development could stall out and he'll keep missing throws like this one. His style is the most difficult to coach because he is so unbelievably talented. The Cardinals' air raid system risks creating bad habits long-term for their quarterback, since Kyler will often have limited 5-man protection schemes and an easy escape hatch with his legs. Even if he shows bad process on a play, he can still pick up 30 yards on the ground. And who's gonna argue with that? Yes, there are still some holes in his game, but what he's shown thus far in his career and in 2020 is incredibly exciting. Defenses are adjusting to Kyler. They've had a whole offseason to study up and catch up. But now that he's unleashed his running ability even more than last year, teams are sprinting back to the film room to try and concoct something completely different. The next few weeks are perfect. The Cardinals have a soft schedule, giving Kyler more reps and in-game experience before later in the season when he faces stiffer competition. The more he develops with his progressions, the more devastating he'll be on the ground. And I promise you, it is tormenting the rest of the NFC West. He is smack dab in the middle of his second year. Will Kyler Murray continue to break out, and will he join the list?